Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live stream where we'll be shining a spotlight on career opportunities in criminal investigation, policing, and criminology. We're joined by Nicola and Chris today, who are both lecturers at DMU, and by Juanita, who's a current student. We're delighted that you could join us at home, so please do leave us your comments and questions throughout the live stream, and we'll be sure to bring them into the discussion. So I'll now hand over to our guests.
Hi there, good afternoon everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Nicola, and as mentioned, I'm part of the teaching team for criminology. And my kind of specialism, I suppose, my area is all about the harms associated with engaging with the criminal justice system. So what happens when somebody perhaps gets a criminal record? And I currently lead on the third year dissertation module, and I'm also the admissions tutor here for criminology and criminology with psychology.
Thank you for that. I'm Chris Alcott. I am the program leader and senior lecturer at DMU for the Degree in Professional Policing BA Honours course and the Criminal Investigations and Policing Studies course, which we have here. My background is in policing. I was a police officer for 30 years. I've been at DMU for the past 9 years, hopefully trying to put some of the experience into some of the academic sides of things as we go forward. My main area of interest is around evidence-based policing, community policing, and research.
Hi everyone, I am Juanita. I'm a third-year student. I'm studying criminology with psychology, and I am from Colombia, so I am an international student at DMU.
Thank you all. So let's talk about your journeys. Could you tell us about your career backgrounds? This is for Nicola and Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose got quite a classic trajectory of I left school at A-levels and didn't really know what I wanted to do, so took a year out and got completely bored and decided that I needed to go to university and do something, challenge myself, and went to study criminology, went on to my master's, and it was there that I started working as a project coordinator for the police and crime commissioners of Cheshire and Staffordshire on a youth project. And it was all about talking to young people living in Cheshire and living in Staffordshire about their experiences of either offending, be it being an offender, or perhaps their experiences of victimization, and how they felt their experiences should inform policing. So it was all research-based, getting the views of young people. And it was there that I spoke to quite a lot of young people who were either in youth offending institutions or perhaps part of like Prince's Trust. And they were talking to me about how having attained a criminal record as a young person, they effectively felt that their lives were over. And these were people who were kind of late teens, early 20s. And they were talking to me about how they felt that really now that they've got that mark against their name, really what was the point essentially. So that really inspired my research around criminal records and what that means for people. And obviously then that research tried to help inform practice in that way. So that's kind of where I'm up to now and how I got interested into this research area.
Thank you, Nicola. And Chris?
Okay, so when I left school, I went to university and joined the police service at 23 and was a police officer for 30 years. During that time, mainly I've been on the uniform side, dealing with community engagement, working in community and response type activities. So for about 3.5 years, I was what we call a force control room inspector. So they deal with the day-to-day operational critical incidents that occur, I suppose. In the latter period of my career, I worked in the training department. And having left the police service, I think it was quite clear that there was movements towards trying to professionalize the actual role of police officers, and that's what we've been trying to do over the past 9 years, to try and develop that process so that it's more in line with some of the agencies that are dealt with that the police service deal with now. So a lot of what we look at now is working with multi-agency organisations, the cultures of organisations, how we best get those to work together in processes, and of course the developing issues around crime, such as things like county lines, cuckooing, international crime with cybercrime, people trafficking, counterfeiting, a whole host of issues, all of which now, if you're a police officer, they are issues that affect you on an individual and organisational basis. So really that has been brought to the educational field so that it actually tries to develop our future police officers so that they're in a position where they can actually go into the 21st century and function effectively with other professionals.
Thank you, Chris. So we've sort of touched on this, but how does your career experience inform your teaching?
Yeah, so I think for me, definitely it's given me an insight into how do you bring young people into your work. So I think there's quite a perception that academics sit in their ivory towers and kind of publish for other academics, and I'm kind of really concerned with making sure that the research that I do actually gets out there and affects people. And likewise, we try to make sure that all of our teaching is research informed. So rather than go away, do my research and then not talk to my students about it, my students will be getting quotes from my participants. They'll be seeing some transcripts and actually engaging with these narratives, these stories, and understanding people's experiences. So for me, I suppose the way that it's really influenced me is how do we kind of bridge my experiences as a researcher with my participants' experiences, with my students' experiences. And I feel like I suppose I'm a bit of a conduit, a facilitator between these different groups of people who actually probably won't get to speak themselves. And how do we all learn from one another and use, I suppose, my position as a researcher and a lecturer to do that. So that's kind of something that I'm really, really interested in, and making sure that my students understand that the research that we're doing is important and why it's important. So I suppose it's not just all about journal articles and textbooks. It's about what are your lecturers actually up to, and how do we bring our research, I suppose, into the classroom. So for me at the moment, in my point of career, that's kind of what I'm, suppose, bringing, that gap between the research and the student experience.
Thank you. That's interesting to hear. Chris?
I suppose if one listens to what is said on the media, what is said on the internet, what's said on Facebook, whatever, the problems around I suppose criminology and policing and investigations are ones that you look at them and think, well, that's dead easy to solve. Why haven't we solved it so far? And really, if you understand the actual field, it's a very complex field. A lot of problems which appear to be very, very simple and simplistic in nature are really quite complex. And what being a police officer has been able to bring to the role of being an academic is perhaps an appreciation of some of those complexities that actually make problems quite insoluble. And even solutions for problems that occur in one field don't work in others, but you would think they would do. So it's been able to inform greatly the understanding of complexity, and hopefully then be able to pass that on to students so that they then, when they look at issues and problems, they look at the complexities and the criticality and the analysis of those more realistically, rather than just take them for the basics as to what they can see.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Juanita, could you talk us through why you chose to study at DMU and what your experience has been like so far?
So I chose DMU for like 3 main reasons. The first one is the fact that it allowed me to look at both criminology and psychology. Like I didn't have to compromise either one or the other. So that's like the first reason why. The second one is because DMU is located in Leicester, and Leicester is a very multicultural city, which for me as an overseas student, it was really important for me. And the last one is the fact that DMU offers a lot of international opportunities. So, for example, right now, I just finished a year abroad in Canada. So I love that DMU like offered me those experiences to do that. And I'm gonna go towards my third year like with a lot of skills that I have been able to develop for the last 2 years. So it's been a great experience so far.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Juanita. So I think we'll move on to some questions. So if you do have questions for our panel, then please do drop them in the comment section and we'll bring them up. So we'll have a look and see what questions we have currently. So are there lots of career opportunities in Leicester?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Leicester is a lively city. So I moved here having never really actually been here before. And yeah, there's a lot going on in Leicester in terms of criminal justice organisations, but actually periphery organisations. And we use that phrase quite a lot in criminology, because when we think about careers and criminology, we often think, okay, police, probation. We might think about courts and prisons, but actually the criminal justice system is so complex, and there's so many different organizations involved in that. So perhaps it might be to do with victim support, drug and alcohol abuse, misuse services, and things like that. And with Leicester being such a large city centre, there's a lot of those opportunities. And just in terms of the location, if you look at where we are on a map in terms of kind of direct routes for motorways, for the rail network, one of the great things about Leicester is that it is such an accessible space. So if you was to say be here, you wouldn't have to just look at Leicester, because you've got great network facilities, you've got great road networks. So it's kind of a bit of a hub. I think Midlands is a really good area to be. So yes, there absolutely is, and you don't have to just think about Leicester either.
Thanks for answering that. Let's take a look at another question. Have we got any more? So how could I do a trip abroad with DMU?
Okay, so it's actually pretty easy to embark in international opportunities. So as of my experience going abroad, the process is very simple. You just have to go through a few interviews with the organizers and just apply to like the specific university you would like to go to. You have a lot of options. DMU is partnered with a lot of universities around the world. And they just really want to see that you're up for the challenge, even if you're international, if you're domestic, or whatever it is. Everyone is allowed to apply, and everyone has the same opportunity to do so. So yeah, it's pretty simple. You just have to be up for the challenge, I guess.
Thank you, Anita. We'll take one more question if there's one. So don't know if you mentioned it before, but what specific career paths can you have within criminology and psychology?
Yeah, really good question. So for criminology and psychology specifically, typically students who choose that are those who are interested in perhaps motivations and understanding how people function, why people do what they do, and things like that, but perhaps also to do with mental health. And this is where drugs and alcohol comes in as well. So if you're interested in criminology and psychology, I would say, again, look at those periphery sectors. So how might we support victims of crime? How might we support mentally disordered offenders? So we have the OPD pathway in prisons. So offender personality difficulty pathway. Perhaps actually with your understanding of psychology and human psychology, and your understanding of crime and causes of crime and issues around rehabilitation and punishment, perhaps actually working within prisons and contributing towards these kind of pathways might be useful for you. So I'd say just keep looking online at different careers. But yeah, if you're looking at criminology and psychology, then I presume it's because you're interested in the individuals. So you're interested in working with people who have experiences as victims or offenders, and so that's probably the route that you'd be going down. In terms of perhaps an answer to your question, one of the things that we don't really have much of in this country, which I think is a big myth, is kind of offender profiling. And we get a lot of students with criminology, with psychology, who want to go on and do kind of offender profiling, such as kind of like all the Criminal Minds shows that you see. And those kinds of careers are quite American, and they don't actually exist in the same way that you might imagine in the UK. So I just have a look around and see. But they're the kind of things that come to mind. I don't know, Chris, if you've got anything. I know you're on criminal investigation and policing, but is there anything that comes to mind with the policing element there?
There's a big movement towards what we call trauma-informed practice, or trauma-informed policing, because the police capture a P and call it policing. And that looks at a lot around where people are committing offences, but actually often they have been victims themselves and actually are in that position because they are victims. And so that upsets the general apple cart as far as saying, well, that person's a good person because they're a victim, that person's a bad person because they're an offender. Now, that doesn't excuse somebody's behaviour, but it does give an understanding as to how those people can be assisted and supported. And a lot of that support comes from multi-agency working between policing and some of these other agencies that deal with these folks. And criminology and psychology, those types of issues work in a lot of areas, work hand in glove with the police service, because they are the end users of the people that have been. So in order to prevent them committing further crimes, they need the support that they've got. And there's a whole host around that. It's not just we're just after to try and catch bad people. There's also the issue of, well, actually, what do you do with them when you caught them? How do you actually help them to preventing them committing further crimes and making more victims? And those types of areas are quite interesting. A lot of charity works around that. I mean, my daughter at the moment works for a charity that deals with offenders. And a lot of times they want to try and break out of that, and it's how they do that and what support they get. So those types of areas of psychology, some of those opportunities that you have to do that, they are growing at the moment because the government want to try and reduce the number of offenders and victims in that way.
Thank you. So we'll move on now. So a question for all of you. How would you recommend students enhance their employability while studying at DMU?
Yeah, really good question. I didn't know whether, Juanita, you want to come in first, just...
Yeah, sure. So at DMU, there's this conference called PAVE. I think that going to those conferences is pretty useful because you have the chance to even have one-to-one meetings with employers and ask specific questions of what they're looking for, what skills they want in applicants, and how you can stand be different from other applicants and have a better chance of getting a job or whatever it is you're looking for. So going to those conferences is pretty useful, and also enhancing your skills. I would say putting yourself out there for international opportunities if you want to. I know I've developed a lot of skills just from going abroad, and skills that and experiences that employers are looking for, such adaptability, international awareness, a lot of things that you need when you graduate and you're looking for a job and you're going forward in your career.
Thank you, Anita.
Yeah, I definitely echo that, particularly with those employability conferences that we host. I think as well, when you're at university, I think you've got access to so much outside of your lectures. And I think a lot of students don't really realise that, or perhaps take advantage of that in the way that they can. So, for example, universities are a hub of research. So you can go and attend talks, even if it's not related to something that is necessary for, say, an assessment or that your peers are going to. Just keep an eye on the events that we have here. So we're the host of the SDG 16, so Sustainability Goals of the United Nations. So just the other day, this week, we've had talks where people from the UN have come and given talks. That's open to students. Now, I suspect very, very few students actually attended, but in terms of actually being able to demonstrate on a CV that you're attending conferences, in terms of networking and meeting people, when you're at a university, you have got access to this real hub of people who care and who want to network and meet one another. So going to those kinds of events, I think, is really, really important. And talking to staff here, talking to students here, because the years go very, very quickly, and before you know it, you're in third year and you're thinking, I don't know what I want to do. So if all the way through first and second year, you're paying attention to what other people are doing, if they're volunteering, or perhaps you can go along and volunteer as well, or perhaps there's a staff member who's talking about a community engagement project that they're doing, brilliant, can you maybe go along and give a hand? So I think it's about just being really aware and really open to viewing university as not just about your assessments, not just about kind of social groups, but actually it's about having access to all these different events and all these different people that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. So just kind of taking advantage of that, I think, for me is really important.
Could I just say that, and this relates to any university that you go to, when you come out of a university, mostly you will have a degree, and so will an awful lot of other people. What marks you out as different to an employer will be what's on your curriculum vitae, your CV. So you need to be doing things at university from the very start to enhance your CV. So you need to be volunteering. You need to be starting to think about it in the first year. If you come to most universities, we have at DMU got an excellent employability team who will come to you in the first year and will talk you through those types of issues of building your CV, because that's the evidence that you need in order to get a seat at the table when you want an interview when you leave. That's what marks you out as a different person to anybody else that's got the same degree as you. So really that needs to be something. If you take, really, in my view, if you take nothing else away from today, that's the thing you need to think. You need to think of building your CV from the moment you get here for what you're going to do when you go out.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to go out and all of a sudden make all these new links. You can take it slowly. So, for example, you might join as a first year and become a student rep, and you might become part of the student voice community. So that's one easy step. Another thing, you might become an ambassador. You might start helping out, supporting out at open days and events, and that leads you. So it's not a case of you have to turn up on day one and start going out into the local area and making these networks. It's a case of you come here and you find your feet and you might volunteer for one thing that might then lead on to something else, and you start accessing more and more opportunities as you go. So yeah, just turning up, being proactive and seeing what you can get out of it, really, because the 3 years do go ever so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's not actually 3 years, it's about 2.5 when all's said and done, you know, by the time you've done everything. So, you know, you really do need to start from the beginning and have a fixed idea, have an idea and keep your mind open about what do I want to do when I leave here, even in the first years.
Thank you. That's been invaluable, invaluable insight there, and invaluable advice as well. So we've kind of touched on this earlier with the question that we had come through, but could you tell us a bit more about what kind of careers do students typically go into after graduating?
Yeah, of course. So typically, I think with criminology, we get some students who want to work within the criminal justice system. So the key organisations, so youth justice, courts, probations, prisons, things like that. We get some students who turn up wanting to do that and then go, actually, maybe not, maybe I'm not so sure. And they might go into these periphery groups. They might work for charities and the third sector. We also get students who go on to do further research. So not necessarily academic research. Some do go on to do master's degrees and then go on to do research within academia. But some might leave and go and work for, say, the local council, or they might go and work for a charity conducting research. Some students go on to work within policy and the field of policy. And we do also have actually quite a few students who go into teaching, because criminology is one of those we call it a rendezvous topic, where when you study criminology, you learn a bit of sociology, history, geography, politics. You learn a little bit of everything. And so we get students who will come and study with us, realize they've got a passion for a related subject, and then go on and do teaching in that subject, or even in criminology as well, because it is becoming increasingly popular in schools. So it is quite a range. We often get students study criminology purely because they don't know what they want to do, but they know that social justice issues, the issues around crime, victimization, poverty, inequality, discrimination, those kinds of issues are important to them for whatever reason. And so typically we get students who turn up and say, I don't know what I want to do, but I know that I'm interested in this subject. And then while they're here, by going to different conferences and stuff like that, then they start to figure out their route. So if you've got an idea in mind of what you want to do, brilliant. When you get here, let us know and we'll help you move towards that. If you're not too sure, that's not a problem at all. Criminology is one of those subjects where a lot of people turn up on day one and say, I'm just here because I want to be here and because I find it interesting. And then you find your route as you go. But yeah, I'd say criminal justice system, then the periphery of the criminal justice system, and kind of policy and research seems to attract quite a lot of our students.
Thank you, Nicola.
I was just going to say, from our point of view, not everybody wants to go into the police service when there's an awful lot of other jobs like analysts. A lot of organisations have investigatory agencies, so anything that's a public sector will have an investigatory agency which they need to have investigators for. Same too in the private sector. So there's an awful lot of opportunities for people with these qualifications if they want to go and follow those types of occupations. Or, as Nicola was saying, sometimes people change directions and go in other particular areas.
Thank you. And Juanita?
As of me, what I'm planning to do after I graduate, I genuinely don't know, because there's so many options. Also with criminology and psychology. In psychology, you have a lot of different career paths that you can take, and I'm just trying to investigate every single option I have and sort of make a well-informed decision. But as Nicola said, like, there's a lot of things you can go to, like there's a lot of career paths you can take. So I'm still deciding.
Yeah, that's great. It's good to hear. Well, so thank you for answering all those questions that we've had throughout the session, and thank you to the viewers as well. We hope you found this live stream helpful and you're looking forward to being part of the DMU community. If we've not been able to answer your question on the live stream, then please email them to us at inquiry@dmu.ac.uk. There are lots of ways that you can actually come and visit us on campus and speak to our lecturers and meet our current students. On the 3rd of May, we have a dedicated applicant taster evening in the faculty, which is a great opportunity to come along and meet other applicants and experience a mini lecture. And there's even free pizza. The link to book is in the comments. So I'd just like to thank you, Nicola, Chris and Juanita, for sharing your experiences with us, and also thank you at home for joining us, and we hope to see you at DMU in the future. Thank you and goodbye.
Hearing my name read out and walking across that stage just reminded me of how far I've come since stepping foot at DMU. DMU changed me, changed my life. This university gave me my identity, the friends I've made, the lessons I've learned, the degrees I've got, and it's made me who I am. DMU has provided me with so many opportunities, and I don't just mean my degrees. I'm proud of those. I have 4, but I mean the life skills, going to New York and dancing on Times Square. I'd never thought I'd do that. Going to India and teaching dance. Learning languages. I've learned 3 new languages since I've come to DMU. Volunteering hours, work experience. So these are the life skills that I've gained that I'm going to need to get on and carry on making the life that I want for myself. And if it wasn't for DMU, I probably wouldn't have done any of this. Going to Dubai was, again, another life-changing experience that I got because of DMU. I got to speak there. It's been a good experience. I've loved learning here because the lecturers that I've had all have industry experience. It's been nice because you know that they know what they're talking about. The student union elections have been a highlight for me because they were different, they were interesting. I managed to win an election during the pandemic, and I think for me that's a win that I'm very, very proud of. Graduation was emotional. My father was sat across me on that stage, and 8 years ago he came and dropped me here. He said to me, you know, just believe in yourself and you'll be able to do it. And I did, and 8 years later, seeing him across me on stage, it was special because it felt like life doing a full circle. You know, when people say that they don't know where home is, for me this is home. I came here as a 20-year-old girl, and 8 years later I'm still here, and the journey hasn't stopped. The journey is still ongoing. This is home. This is where I grew up.